call the meeting to order of the Public Safety Building Committee.
Good evening. Today's Monday, April 25th, 2016, meeting of the Board of Selectmen. I do not expect Selectwoman Faniff to be here this evening. I do expect Selectman Semino, who's walking in as we speak right now. So the first meeting item on the agenda is the joint meeting with the Public Safety Study Committee. Status of project. Good evening, Mr. Hamilton. Good evening, committee. Thank you all for coming out on a Monday night. I'm sure you had nothing better to do. I'll turn it over to you, Mr. Hamilton.
Thank you. Al Hamilton, I'm the chairman. And the purpose here tonight is to sort of review, in light of the last town meeting, whether the board wishes to give us any additional insight or instruction as to how to proceed. We've been working for about a year and a half, as you know, and we have made a recommendation with respect to a public safety facility siting and a recommendation that the board engage in the negotiation with St. Mark's for the acquisition of some additional land, which I understand that you are currently doing and is the subject of an executive session material, so we won't discuss that in detail here. But it does appear clear that whatever we're going to do is going to require several 2/3 votes on the floor of town meeting. And those seem to be hard to come by right now. And I am particularly concerned, and this is now my own opinion, the committee hasn't had a chance to discuss this in light of sort of the last annual town meeting, that at least one and possibly two of the 2/3 votes will be surrounded with potential controversy. And that in the presence of potential controversy, getting to 2/3 is a very heavy lift. And so I think it's really a question of whether the board, as you know, we work for you. You set the policy direction. Whether you want us to continue focusing on a public safety facility as opposed to some other concept. And if you do, what we as a committee can do and what the Board of Selectmen as our executive government can do to perform the heavy lifts required to get to 2/3, because I don't want to go down the road that the Main Street Working Group did, or that your body did in trying to dispose of some buildings in desperate need of disposal. And so I think we need to take some lessons away, maybe be a little humble about how we proceed. So that's really the purpose for standing here today.
Let me go out of character somewhat and speak first rather than soliciting my other members' comments. First, to update people where we're at in terms of our negotiations. Selectman Shea and Town Administrator Purple and myself, we have met, I believe, on 3 occasions, and maybe more than that, with St. Mark's to discuss the acquisition of land for a public safety facility. We are negotiating with them in terms of values associated with the project, and they are speaking. They meaning the headmaster and their business agent are reporting back to their various trustees, and we expect to have what I would consider the final negotiations, if you will, within 2 to 3 weeks with St. Mark's, whereby it's my hope that we can come away with an agreement in principle with St. Mark's with regards to land acquisition, subject to a vote at town meeting. So that's where we are at with St. Mark's. I had hoped that the pace of the negotiations would be a lot quicker. My hope was to be able to make a report at town meeting as to where we're at on that, but my hopes were also dashed in terms of not having any substantive information to report. With respect to this public safety complex and the idea of a public safety complex, it is this board's #1 goal that we set out at our retreat. And I, both personally and collectively as a member of this board, feel a personal obligation to our public safety officials to build a structure which is habitable and in which is not, does not require them to work in what I would consider to be squalor, in particular or specifically the police department. Yes, it's going to be a tough row to hoe at town meeting, but I am hard pressed to change the direction of that focus based upon what recently happened, only because you know, if town meeting rejects a public safety facility that we are planning to build that will house these people for the next 40 years, and instead seeks to do patchwork at that location, that is not a good direction for this town. In addition, I want to make sure people understand, and in particular, anyone who has any historical attachment to this Peters Annex, I can tell you categorically, based upon the report of the committee, the needs assessment of the committee, that that annex has no future in the public safety facility complex scheme, nor any future as a town-owned building. Those are two conditions, or that is a condition which people need to know now, and I don't want anyone to feel that this information was sprung on them at the last minute. The Peters Annex is not going to be a functioning part of any public safety facility moving forward. Just isn't. With that said, those are my thoughts on it, and I will turn it over to Mr. Semino.
I agree 100% with Mr. Rooney's thoughts, and I would add a couple of more. I'm not as skeptical as Mr. Hamilton about the prospect of 2/3 votes at town meeting. I'm not nearly confident either, but not as skeptical. I believe the experience we had this past go-round, especially with regard to Main Street, was a little bit of an artifice. I'll be very frank about that. There were folks who used the mechanism of the easements to defeat a much larger project that up till now had been widely supported. The lesson learned, and the humble lesson learned, good word, Mr. Hamilton, is that we do have, we certainly need to learn how to better deal with a vocal minority, which is what I believe was at work in both of those instances at this town meeting. And I believe we can do that. And so, as I say, I echo Mr. Rooney's comments. I'd like to press forward as we are.
Dan?
So we are so far unanimous in this. So, you know, I will agree that 2/3 can be a challenge, but I also have seen what many people have done, including teenagers in this town, to you know, raise awareness on a building for an owner that they didn't even know. And this town ended up giving him about $1 million. Again, an individual they didn't even know. We know our police officers. We know our firefighters in town. I will be shocked if those same people that galvanized hundreds of people to come to town meeting for a preservation restriction wouldn't be that much and more in support of doing something that needs to be done for our public safety officials. So yes, could be a challenge, but I'll be shocked if they don't come out in full support of the people who support them every day.
Brian?
Well, I will make it unanimous in my opinion as well. I mean, this is a project that I was involved with 8 to 10 years ago when we first started this. In my opinion, we should have done it 8 to 10 years ago back then, and was running for this position about a year ago, with the public safety complex being one of the top priorities that I had, and that remains one of the top priorities that I have. You know, obviously the results of this recent town meeting notwithstanding, with respect to another project that I thought was worthwhile, the Main Street project. I think we can get the support for public safety, in particular for the police. And at this point, I think that, you know, as close as we are to in the negotiations with St. Mark's, hopefully we'll get some positive news on that front, and be able to move forward again very quickly.
One other thing I'd just like to add is that I think we should try to put this on a short leash, Mr. Hamilton, insofar as having a special town meeting. Clearly, our negotiations with St. Mark's will be finalized within the time frame I mentioned earlier. But I do think we should have a special town meeting in the fall, which would then allow us to go to the ballot box on a borrowing issue or land acquisition issue or whatever issues that need to go to the ballot box at the same time as the presidential election, which tends to draw a larger turnout than our typical May election. So in terms of timing, I want your committee to understand that this is not a black hole, that we will escape from this, and we will escape from this hopefully by a special town meeting in the fall. And I'd ask you all just to continue with the patience that you've shown thus far until we report back to you with the findings or the results from the St. Mark's discussion. You've already done yeoman's work in creating the needs assessment. We know what we need for the next 40 years. We know the footprint that we need for that 40-year time period. We just don't know where we can put that footprint right yet. And I can promise to you that as soon as we have the discussions and we have an agreement in principle at St. Mark's, we'll then come right back to you and we'll get the engine moving forward. I do think in terms of the town meeting discussion, you know, the public education is the critical component of this, and this board has got a lot of heavy lifting to do to make sure that that goes, that the town is well informed of the needs and the cost issues associated with this project. So we're gonna have to do a lot of work this summer to get to the point where we are confident that we can get the required 2/3 at town meeting. But I share your skepticism. At the same time, I do think this is a different, hopefully we can have a different perspective at this town meeting with regards to the public safety facility. Mr. Hamilton, I don't know if any of your
I
other...
don't know that any members of the committee or the public have any thoughts or,
I have a couple,
Yeah,
but big surprise.
yeah, no.
One, just purely sort of mechanical. We are probably going to need some modest additional sums to finish the site planning. And I'm hoping that those exist in your engineering budgets. You could check on that.
Before you go, Mr. Purple, do you know the answer to that?
The answer is yes, and it depends on what amount.
Okay.
So if it's in the $15,000-$20,000, then I think we can do that.
Okay. Yeah, this could cross fiscal years too. So,
Sure.
yeah. And that's of course obviously subject to the final.
But that's in an article.
Once we know what the piece of land actually looks like,
Right.
that you're able to secure, we've given you sort of indications of what we want. But so that's sort of a mechanical one. I think it's going to be very important. This is, I'm looking at the guys, you guys all won elections. And you won them by a lot more votes than most people who show up at a town meeting, that head count. And I'm looking at guys, we need the Board of Selectmen to do some heavy lifting. One of them, I think, is to deliver a fairly clear message, particularly to the boards that you appoint, what the policy of the town of Southborough is, because you gentlemen and Ms. Bannock make that policy because we elected you. And, I lost, so I don't get a full vote in that, but you guys won an election. I think you have to have some fairly clear policy directives, because, I don't think it's fair to this committee that we should encounter, since we're operating on what is a very high priority according to our elected leaders, that we should have to run into substantial opposition from other boards that you appoint. So I think there is a certain amount of interference that has to be run, and some clear messages that ought to be delivered. So that, you guys have given us direction. I haven't always agreed with it, but we've been following it, and I think the rest of our government who are appointed by you need to receive that same sort of guidance.
Point well taken. We make our appointments on June 30th. Mr.
So you
Purple?
make them in the second meeting in June.
The second meeting in June, and I do think certain vetting procedures need to be in place, especially with regards to this particular project. You said you had 2 points.
No, well, the other one was.
The money.
Okay.
The question about, because I think there will be some additional monies,
Yeah.
and then, you're absolutely correct. I think, we're prepared to do, our stations at the transfer stations and the senior center and a variety of other places, but I think it would be important that the Board of Selectmen are seen, carrying that banner as well. Here's sort of the political reality. We have to put somewhere between 300 and 400 butts in the seats at town meeting who are willing to vote in favor of what we're proposing, to have a comfortable chance at success. And that's work. And, that's work we can help with, but we need your help as well, so that we're all working on the same team and driving this forward. Does that make sense?
Anything else?
I said my piece.
Thank you all. Yes,
Okay.
yeah,
Just because we're here.
Yeah.
I just think with the site and with the acquisition and the land swap or whatever, it's bigger than just the project. I mean, there's the bigger education of what's possible with the golf course. Right? So it's not just
So there's,
it's not just public safety.
no, that's,
yeah. I mean, what we're
Not what we're
doing
talking
is there's a lot of moving parts right now, and we're still trying to discuss those and come up with a final agreement in principle. But until we do, then we'll have that full discussion at that time. Anything else?
anything else, gentlemen?
Chief?
Just want to thank everybody. I know it's been on the back burner a little bit, but really it hasn't been for you. So just thanks for the support. And I think we've researched, there are a few towns that have gone through the process of, Holden comes to mind, where the article was defeated several times, and then they made a concerted effort to bring their shareholders in an information session, then also to get out the word around town. And once they did that, it was overwhelmingly passed. So I think we have some blueprints to follow going forward, and we'll be able to get some help there.
Yeah, hopefully the one change or difference in the blueprints is it won't be defeated a couple times, and then we'll have to go back the third time. Hopefully we get it right the first time.
That's, hopefully we can learn from their lesson.
Yeah.
Until they did that and got the shareholders on board, they didn't have success. But once they did, like I said, it was overwhelming. In fact, there was an article in a professional fire magazine about how they were able to accomplish it, so.
Great. Mr. Wood?
The space needs report, did we ever get that finalized, or should we get that finalized? Because space needs are gonna be space needs no matter where we build it, how it's built, or anything like that. We voted unanimously that we needed that space.
I believe we have voted
We've
to
draft.
accept the draft.
Now, have we got the final report from the engineer, the architect
No.
yet? And do we need to get that so we can start getting that up?
We're not until we cross the Ts and dot the Is on the site.
But the space needs not gonna change.
Right, so, but we've accepted those, so I think, they exist one way or the other.
Okay. That was my question. Thank you.
Yeah, I've kind of lost track of where we're at with the consultant.
Me too.
In all honesty, I thought we had the final space needs report, but
We do, we haven't had his final report because we haven't had a clarification on what the site is. Mark, you probably have the most recent data.
No, I think that's pretty accurate, Al. We've kind of asked the consultant to hold on pending the negotiations that we have with St. Mark's, to let that play out so we can have an understanding of, getting additional land, and then, is everything going to fit, is a traffic pattern going to work and everything, and then having them put all of that into, the final report. But yes, the space needs they are what they are, and they're done. It's just a matter of now folding that all into the larger report.
Yeah.
So.
anything further?
No, we can make it simple.
We need to take a 2-minute recess. Mr. Kalenda has a
Shouldn't be
phone
longer
call
than
What's that?
Yeah, just a couple minutes.
Couple minutes, and then we'll just continue with our meeting. Thank you all. Thank you.
Good job.
Reports? Oh, back on.
back?
Back on? Yep. You have a report?
Thank you for the,
Yep.
that I'm all set.
Purple.
I do not.
Okay. Consent agenda. Mr. Semino?
I'll move that that the board approve consent agenda items 1 through 6.
Is there a second?
No, not yet.
Well, hold on.
Let me anticipate. I move that we approve consent agenda items 1, 2, 4, 5, and 6.
Now there's a second.
Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye. Now, for purposes of putting it on the table, I'll move consent agenda item number 3.
Okay, is there a second?
Second.
Any further discussion?
Yes. So in anticipation of this, so I've done some, I made some suggested revisions to the current draft of the host agreement. I think folks have that. There is, if anyone wants a copy, they can have mine. And prior to even going through this, I was out of country the last time that this, the issue of the, whether or not the town would issue a letter in support or non-opposition to the operator. Since then, we have had a town meeting where there is a warrant article pushing those limits to 1,000 and then 100 to a residential areas. In light of that, and in light of it's appeared to be an overwhelming vote in support of that article, I'd like to, I know we have a motion on the table, but I'd like to discuss as well whether or not this board should rescind that letter of non-opposition at this time.
Well, I don't think we can discuss that. That's not on the agenda. We had a full hearing where it was on the agenda. We had public comment with regards to the letter of non-opposition, and it was a unanimous vote. So we can't discuss any rescinding of that this evening.
Okay, if we can't do it this evening, I think in light of the vote, if we could put that on a
No.
subsequent agenda, I'd like to request that we do that.
No, well, you can request that, but the second thing is, in terms of your revisions, Dan, as I told you earlier today, we've had this host agreement draft for, everyone's had it at least for a month. And the revisions that you made an hour or two before this meeting are revisions to the agreement that you've had for a month. And we had a full meeting where we talked about the host agreement, and we incorporated all of the revisions, or the majority of your revisions from that prior meeting. And Selectman Shea and I went back and negotiated those new terms with the applicant. So we've negotiated this agreement at least 3 times with the applicant. Therefore, I am not, and I didn't see anything new in your revisions that we have not talked about before, both at the prior meeting and at the initial meeting. So my feeling is that the first question is whether or not we entertain revising the host agreement any further based upon your recent revisions, and I would vote no to that.
So regardless of the time period that we had the latest draft, we couldn't have discussed it until there was an open meeting anyway. So whether or not those were provided 3 weeks prior or 30 seconds prior to this meeting, now's the time to discuss it. So
We had an open meeting. We discussed.
not since the last revision.
We discussed the revisions and all the revisions that you wanted at our last meeting, and as a result of that, it was sent back and we renegotiated that.
Right.
So the question that I would make a motion in terms of, do we want to have any further revisions to the host agreement?
Yes.
Well, I would move that we have no further revisions to the host agreement. Is there a second?
I'll second for discussion.
Okay. Further discussion.
Yeah, I first want to make sure it's clear to the folks here and the folks at home that we're sort of, we want to draw a line between two different things here. One is the host agreement, one is the revisiting of the letter of non-opposition. I think we all agree we can't really revisit the letter of non-opposition tonight. It's certainly, theoretically a subject for a future meeting. In terms of the host agreement, I think it's important to understand the context for it, right? The applicant has, at one point or other, a process to go through, not only with Department of Public Health at the state level, but with our board, with our zoning board of appeals, with our planning board. And there are various checks and balances on the applicant's ability to operate that come with all of those things. Separate and on top of that, we have what's called a host agreement that speaks to the sort of benefits to the town that the applicant is willing to, financial, in large part financial benefits that the applicant is willing to provide should it open someday for business. Obviously, no money will flow to the town if the applicant doesn't open. If the applicant does open, then the terms of the host agreement would apply. The reason I'm making this point is that approval of the host agreement by this board, I believe, is whether you support or don't support the opening of the dispensary itself. If the dispensary were to open, it would be incumbent on this board to do the best we can with a host agreement in terms of what we can get the applicant to agree to. The host agreement is, unlike all those other steps I mentioned, planning board, zoning board, this board, DPH, is entirely optional. It's entirely at the discretion of the host, or of the applicant to enter into. So then the question in my mind becomes, have we done as best we can in terms of the benefit to the town that's represented by the agreement? Not whether they should open or shouldn't open, or under what conditions they should open or shouldn't open. But if those were all to happen, have we done our best to then get the applicant to agree to, the monetary advantages, et cetera, that are represented here. So that's the stage, I think, to this discussion. I believe that the last version of the host agreement that I saw was extremely, extremely generous in terms of what flows back to the town. So I would be inclined to approve it, if for no other reason than if we don't, we could get a call from the applicant tomorrow saying, you know what, it's off the table. I mean, they're under no obligation to do this.
Yes, they are.
Well,
No,
Yes,
the host
they are.
agreement?
Ready?
it's in the special permit.
It's in special permit.
Yeah, but the terms.
So they are, they have to do it.
No. Okay. I stand corrected on that in terms of the fact of the agreement itself. The contents of the agreement obviously are what we're talking about. And I apologize for being imprecise on that. I don't want to necessarily risk the contents of the current draft by taking more time if we agree that the contents of the current draft are extremely beneficial to the town, and I believe they are. So that's my comment.
All right. Mr. Shea.
Well, again, this is the first time that I'm seeing this tonight. So I guess the disadvantage to waiting as long as you did to get the draft out, it's something that couldn't be put into the packet, couldn't be reviewed ahead of time, so we could have a discussion on it tonight. This came via email, I think, while I was in the car driving here from Burlington, so I have not had the opportunity to review it. Again, I was, with respect to the language of the agreement, whether we're going to have an agreement, I was comfortable with the latest version that was distributed with the packet. So, again, I just haven't had the time to go through and understand what the comments are and the reasons for the comments.
All right, that's fair. So, Mr. Rooney?
Just one more thing,
Yeah.
Dan, I wanted to add. Town council has reviewed the draft that was in the packet and has indicated it is in legal, it is in sufficient legal form for signature this evening. So he's already done a review of it as well.
Yeah, I would say the form would, I'm sure it would pass legal muster, but, I mean, I do this for a living, okay, and I've been doing this on the road for the last 2.5 weeks for a living, so my apologies that I wasn't in front of my computer, crafting this the minute it came back to me. I have done it since. Every single edit in here was done for a reason. It was not done in an attempt to delay, unless someone can also tell me that there is an immediate need tonight to enter into this agreement, then I'd be shocked if people wouldn't take a little bit of time and review it. And we have a meeting in literally 2 weeks. So if there's some exigent circumstance that requires an immediate, agreement tonight, please let me know. If there's
Dan,
not,
we've
then I'll
had
ask
it,
that we.
we've had it for a month. We've had the agreement for a month. We've had a public meeting where we talked about the language 2.5 weeks ago. You made comments at that meeting 2.5 weeks ago about revisions that you wanted. We incorporated that into the final agreement that was in the in the packet this evening. Town council has reviewed it. It's ready to be signed tonight.
So
If you don't want to sign it, that's okay. You don't have to sign it. But I say we move to sign and approve, ratify the host agreement that was in the packet.
So I will, once again, I will state that while we did have a good discussion about what suggested edits I'd like to see negotiated in, it is not true that all of those are in here.
No, we negotiated all of them that we could negotiate with the applicant. What we did, and I sent you the draft of all the things that we negotiated with the applicant, and we came back with the agreement that's in the packet.
Right.
There were
So-
certain things that we could not negotiate with them.
Okay, but are you saying that we are done negotiating, are they done negotiating with the town, that if they don't get the agreement that they have in front of them, they're gonna walk away from the, doing business in the town?
I did not posit it to them in that fashion. What I did, though, is that we had 3 meetings with them where we went back with additional comments. And the most recent discussion was as a result of all of this board's comments, which we had at a meeting. To now go back to them again with additional comments just doesn't seem to be the best practice. So, again, if you don't want to vote in favor of the host agreement, that's okay. But we either vote in favor of it or we don't vote in favor of it.
Right, so we had thought that this was a 3-year agreement. Is that everyone's recollection on the board? This is supposed to be a 3-year agreement?
My recollection is that there was language in it about reopening it after 3 years,
Right.
depending, and I wanted to make that at the town's option only.
Right, that's not in here. So right now, it has a clause that would allow this agreement to continue in perpetuity. And to me, I didn't think anyone on this board was looking to have this particular agreement continue in perpetuity.
Where does it say in perpetuity?
It doesn't say the words, but the language itself, which I can show you exactly where it is.
Please do.
Okay, section 12. So it had talked about that, that it may be reopened, all right, or shall be reopened.
Shall be reopened
Okay.
on the first day of the 3rd year.
Right. So it'll be reopened, but when you read further along at the end, it says that the terms will remain in full force and effect until any new agreement is put in place. If no agreement is ever reached to put one in place, these terms remain in full force and effect forever.
Correct.
I didn't think anyone on the board thought this was gonna be an agreement that could go on in perpetuity if the other party doesn't come to an
The
agreement.
first
with
part,
the
this
town.
first sentence says, this agreement shall be reopened, shall, not discretionary, shall be reopened for negotiations. So it needs to be open for negotiations on the first day of the 3rd year. So it shall be reopened,
I
not
agree.
may, it shall be, so it will be reopened.
Right.
So it's not discretionary.
But that doesn't go to the point of it shall be reopened, but what if the operator never comes to an agreement with us? What if the town says?
Then they're in violation of the special permit.
No, because this says, right now, it will remain in full force and in effect until any new agreement is put in place.
That's right.
So this one will continue forever.
No, it says shall be reopened for negotiations. It shall be reopened.
That's correct.
It has
There's
to be
two different
open.
things, though. The shall be reopened is totally, completely different from will remain in full force and effect until a new agreement is put in place.
No, I disagree. It says the agreement shall be reopened for negotiations. Shall is not discretionary. Shall means it must be reopened for any renegotiations.
I agree, but shall does not mean that it will be, that a new agreement will ever be reached.
Okay, let's agree to disagree on that.
So my thought process, yeah, I'll just jump in wanting to keep that language in, to remain in full force and effect, was that while negotiations were going on, that the town was still going to be the beneficiary of the financial parts of this, okay? We still have in paragraph 15, the statement, this agreement shall terminate at the time that either of the following occur. And the first one, the town notifies the operator of the town's termination of this agreement. So if those negotiations are not going well, and there are terms that we don't like, we can terminate the agreement, and the terms of which are still in effect. So we can use this paragraph 15A to terminate the agreement. Absent an agreement, they're in violation of the special permit. So that is the out that the town has to get out of this contract.
Right, I mean, we could technically do that the day after this thing is.
Correct.
But my read of 15 was if we do that, right now we have an agreement to negotiate in good faith in 12. If we terminate, could we be considered to be doing so in bad faith? Does there have to, I read that more as, I would suspect 15 is read as if there's a material breach of the agreement, then we can notify them and we can terminate. I had 12 and 15 different.
But Dan, 12, your concern in 12 is taken care of by 15. Because if the agreement is not renegotiated, which it says shall be renegotiated, then the town can terminate it. So it does not go on in perpetuity.
Yeah, I think, John, part of my challenge is there could be a conflict between 12 and 15. That's just one of the issues that I personally had with the draft. Again, I may be on my own island if no one wants to read them. And there's some sort of absolute need to do this tonight, then you three can make that decision. I would suggest that people take a look at it and that the operator take a look at these. These are, there was thought that went into this, and it wasn't, to try to never come to an agreement. I'm trying to make the best agreement for the town of Southborough, and I think it requires a little extra work.
Okay, well, I appreciate that, and again, I'm not trying to dictate it, and if the other two members want to continue this discussion, so be it. But my feeling is, and my position is, that this agreement has been negotiated with the applicant on multiple occasions. The agreement has been vetted by this board, has been vetted by the public on multiple occasions, and it also received the independent review of our legal counsel. I'm ready to vote on it this evening. That's my position. Now, if the other members are not ready to vote on it, then we won't vote on it. But my position is that we vote on it this evening. Dan, I understand your position is that we don't. Let's hear from the other two members.
Yeah, I'm just reading 12 and 15 together again here to see whether whether there's a conflict here or one that I think is a risk to the town. I mean, I think the greater risk to the town, frankly, is not having an agreement. And by the way, again, reemphasizing that having this agreement has no bearing on when and under what conditions this facility actually opens. This is simply operative at the time, if and when it does open. That doesn't go to the substance of the agreement, but I think that's important to understand for the folks who sort of are thinking about the letter as pertains to this. It really doesn't. I don't know if that's clear or not, but I want to at least try to make that clear. We got a lot of correspondence today.
So, just to frame the issue, Paul, do you
Yeah.
want to vote on the agreement tonight or don't you?
Well, just give me a second, John. I would reiterate my comment from last time, but I did not prevail last time in terms of having reopen to be strictly the town's option. But yes, I think I'm ready to vote.
Brian?
I'm ready to vote.
Okay. All in favor of ratifying and signing the host agreement with Comcast?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed?
Opposed.
3-1. There is a school funding resolution that was in the packet. Did everyone read that from Mr. Desmond? Does anyone have any questions? Okay. We need to take a formal vote according to Paul.
Which Paul?
Paul Desmond, I'm sorry.
Thank you.
Let me see if I can frame the motion. I would move that the Board of Selectmen vote consistent with the Southborough School Committee, who voted unanimously to support a resolution calling on the state to fully fund and adopt the recommendations of the Foundation Budget Review Commission. Is there a second?
Second.
Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Can you tell Mr. Desmond that we voted that?
I'll take care of that. I'll legislate it, so.
All right. With that, I would move to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.